listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits, a podcast that encourages you to love more in your friends and to further consider the issues that plague friendships. I'm Alysa Lucas, and somehow it both seems like it was yesterday as well as 40 years ago that the U.S. started to shut down due to the global pandemic. However, we just celebrated, and celebrated is not the right word. We factually have experienced 365 days, a full year, and shut down due to the pandemic. And on that night, March 11th, 2021, our President Joe Biden addressed the nation. He first wanted to honor the 527,726 Americans that have died so far from the coronavirus, and to give a message of solace and healing to those who have lost a loved one due to the virus. In that speech, he also talked about how he had the goal of having every American adult be eligible to receive a vaccine by May 1st, and that 100 million more doses of the vaccine have been ordered. So I know for many people, being vaccinated, getting your first dose, your second dose, or knowing that there is a chance to get vaccinated in the near future brings a lot of hope. And so on today's episode, I want to talk about the new phase of the pandemic that we're experiencing, what it might mean for us individually, and what it might mean for our friendships. This new phase is, oh gosh, friends, it's hard for me. It's something that I've been thinking about for the last week or so, and I felt compelled to talk about it on this episode. This idea of hope while still being in the pandemic is difficult, right? It's been a whole year, and there's something about experiencing the anniversary that brings back a lot of feelings of when we were first shut down. There's almost this level of PTSD, some trauma from re-traumatizing ourselves by talking about this is the last day we did something normal. Post a picture of the last time you did something with friends. This is when March Madness was shut down. This is when this thing was shut down. And to me, we've already been there. I don't know that I want to experience it again. And for other people, it might be important to reflect on the last year and what it means. We're all handling the pandemic differently, right? And we talked about that in the COVID Divide episode, where we talk about people who approach how they cope with it, how they protect themselves and their family, and how that might bring conflicts among friends, family members, and so forth. And now there seems to be a turn. But the turn comes with a major heavy load that we're carrying on our shoulders of the whole year of the trauma we've experienced, whether it be isolation and loneliness, misery, anxiety, pain, illness, the loss of a loved one without being able to say goodbye, to be able to see them, to have a funeral. And then it leads into this, like, we can get back to normal. And it's almost like, whoa, pump the brakes. What is normal anymore? But additionally, how quickly can we get to whatever our new normal, our post-vaccination life might look like? And with the rollout of the vaccines, it seems like the hope is there and we need it, right? We need the light in the dark, right? We need to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that if there's no hope, then that is a loss for a lot of people, right? We need to grasp onto something that feels real and that we can make up for lost time, that we can get back to doing the things that we love to do. And for most people, the most simplest thing would be hugging the ones we love. Right? Being able to go to a coffee shop and hang out with a friend, being able to celebrate your grandmother's 100th birthday. Some people that has sort of been a metaphor this whole pandemic, but people who really want to get back to brunch, and I enjoy brunch, but I'm also like, maybe I'm a Debbie Downer here, and I'm feeling a little like we need to think about some of the things that are going on right now, because I think that entering this new phase produces some new issues for us individually and for our relationships. So let me talk a little bit about this. Some of the things that I've been thinking about in the last week, what you might consider as you get vaccinated and your friends and family get vaccinated and you move forward. And of course, as always, I love to hear feedback, your thoughts, your experiences. Want to be able to talk about these things. It's not only about celebrating our friendships on this podcast, but it's also about like how can we manage the difficulties? And right now there are a lot of difficulties, right? And social distance or physical distance is just one or two of those issues. So this past Monday, and this is from a Healthline article that you can find in my show notes, that this past Monday, March 8th, 2021, the CDC announces new guidelines for vaccinated folks, right? And so you have to be 2 weeks past your second dose if that's the type of vaccine you got. As you might know, the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine is only one shot. So it'll be 2 weeks past that vaccine that you can start doing small gatherings with other people who are vaccinated, and that those who are vaccinated should still exercise caution, right? Which is still going to be the washing your hands, wearing your mask in public and around those who aren't vaccinated, and maintaining social distance in public and with those who aren't vaccinated. Additionally, the Washington Post reported that the CDC said it was okay for vaccinated grandparents to visit their loved ones, and this came out on March 11th. That produces a lot of hope, right? Like, I can see grandma, right? You know, people are like, yes, let's do it. It's been 365 days. It might have been longer for some people, right? You know, people have gone to the homes that their parents are in and can only look at them through a window. They're showing, you know, new children through the window. Like, there's so many things that people have missed out on, or the things that we're used to doing we haven't been able to do. Some of those things are minor inconveniences, and other things are major need producing activities, right? We have needs as humans. We have needs for connection and for affection, and a lot of those needs might have been unfulfilled in the last year, or fulfilled in sort of a triage, like we're triaging it, right? It's like, put a Band-Aid on it, it's temporary, this is what you can do, and people are just waiting for it to go back to 100%, like, this is it, like, yes, we can visit grandma and grandpa, they can meet their new grandchildren, we can do all these things. So I went online to see how many of the population have been vaccinated at this point, because this seems like we're near it, friends. We are near the vaccines. We're going to be vaccinated, and the sun is out. So this is from NPR, and this comes from today, March 12th, 2021, and this is updated regularly. And what it does is show a map and charts regarding the percentage of folks who've been vaccinated in the United States, and then by state. And I'm sure in other countries you might have web pages that do the same for your particular spaces where you live. So in the United States, 19.3% of the population is vaccinated with at least one dose. And again, this comes from the NPR webpage. 98,203,89. How do you even say that number? 98 million plus people. Let's just say I don't talk about big numbers every day, folks, but 98 million plus doses have been administered so far. And basically, though, that's 1/5 of our population. And so when I saw the CDC report this idea of folks who've been vaccinated and grandparents can visit and do all that kind of stuff, I felt like, oh, that must mean the population has really, like, we're at nearing a majority of our population being vaccinated, but that is not the case. In Michigan, so of course I'm going to check my state, and you can do this on that webpage as well, we're just a little bit less than the United States average, the national average. We're at 8.8% vaccinated, and about 10.5% are fully vaccinated, and that comes with a population of 9.9 million. And so we're still at the beginning stages of being vaccinated, and although there seems to be this excitement, there's a few other things that we need to be concerned about. So the first thing, of course, I think people are considering is that there are a number of people, according to reports I've seen on news, and mainly this is me scrolling through Twitter at the end of the day or in the early morning, that there are a lot of people who don't want to take the vaccine. Certainly we have people who are anti-vaxxers, right? People who don't believe in vaccinations, no matter what it might be. But then that there might be people who are hesitant because they don't want to take this vaccine. And their reasons for not wanting to be vaccinated are myriad, right? There's lots of different reasons. And so, but one of the things that I was reading this morning when I was looking at the numbers and such is that when doctors ask people why they might be hesitant about getting the vaccination, it's just that they have questions, and then once their questions were answered, they do want to get the vaccination. So certainly one area of concern is that people might be hesitant, and so if that's your parents or your siblings or friends, obviously we're a friendship podcast, then it might be like, why are you hesitant? And is there some maybe interpersonal influence that might happen through conversations or helping get them information that might decrease any vaccine hesitancy that might be going on? So for you, that might be the case that you're experiencing, and you're turning to friends or loved ones or medical professionals to determine whether or not the vaccine is for you. On the other hand, you might be someone who's like, the more that's vaccinated, the better, right? Like that we can get closer to perhaps handling the situation we're in. Certainly there are variants of COVID-19, and additionally, it looks to, and I'm a social scientist, I'm not a scientist, okay? But what I gather is that much like the flu shot, we will have to get a COVID-19 vaccine as well each year. At least that's how I understand it. Feel free to correct me. So it's maybe one of those things where you can help educate your friends and family by talking about it on social media sites and in conversations and Zoom, by posting your picture of getting vaccinated yourself. And that started when vaccination started, right? You start to see like, here's the first person being vaccinated, right? Here's a famous person or a politician or a public figure getting vaccinated to show that, hey, you should also get vaccinated. And then you start to see medical professionals get vaccinated and teachers getting vaccinated. And so what we have now is much like when people vote and they post pictures that they voted, we now have pictures of folks posting that they've been vaccinated. So I ran a very non-scientific poll via Twitter, my personal Twitter, which is at Dr. Alysa Lucas. If you'd like to check me out, I talk a lot about my animals and memes and TV and basically things I do on this podcast. But yeah, so I did a very unscientific poll, and I asked people, you know, as I've been thinking about this new phase that I believe that we're in, is like, would you or have you shared a picture of your vaccine? And if you have, like the options were like, yes, because I'm excited. Yes, I want to encourage others. No, because other people are waiting. Or no, because it's private. And so my very non-scientific findings were that out of the 67 people who filled out the poll that I ran for approximately one day, was that 83.6% of people said that they either have or will post pictures of their vaccination. 22.4% people just said they were excited. And I can feel that, right? Like for a year, it's just like, oh, all I want to do is walk around Target with the coffee and go see a movie and just do all the things that people might have done before without really thinking about it, right? But now if I want to go anywhere, I'm like, wait, I have to put in an order to do pickup. Okay, do I have my mask? Do I have wipes to sanitize things? So there's like a whole list of things, and it's like, well, if I'm going to go out, it seems difficult, so I might as well do all my pickups. So let me get my groceries, let me get my Target, let me do all the things at one time. Whereas how many times before March 2020 did you just hop in your car and you're like, well, I got to go to the post office, and then I might pick up, it's March, so I might get a Shamrock Shake at McDonald's. I get one a year to enjoy. Thank you very much. And then I might just hop over to Target, see what's in the dollar bin, right? What's for $3 that I probably don't need, but I want to buy anyway. And maybe I stop by my friend's house and I see what's up with them. And like, people are excited to get back to what we remember from pre-pandemic, although that might not be exactly what happens, or it might not happen for some time still. So there are people who are excited. And then 61.2% of my non-scientific poll said that they post pictures because it encourages others to get the vaccine. So getting back to this idea of vaccine hesitancy. And so for some of you, this might not be the case. You might be friends or have loved ones that are like-minded in this way and just want to get the shot and like, let's move on. And certainly very excited when my parents are vaccinated, hearing about some of my other loved ones who are getting vaccinated, like that's very exciting for me. And so for me, it might not be so much encouraging others, but certainly that might be some of the conversations that you're having with your friends, right? But the next thing that we have to be concerned about is sort of, I guess it's a two-sided coin, or maybe it's like a Rubik's Cube where it's like multiple sides and it moves around and we only like one person can solve it. Love the Rubik's Cube metaphor. But one of the things that, that we have to consider is that people get the vaccine. A lot are excited, but other people feel shame. And that there are people who are not vaccinated who are experiencing envy. So let's talk about that because these might be some of the things that we might need to consider when interacting with our friends on social media or interacting with them over text or if we're doing Zoom or even if it's social distance face-to-face. So some of the things I've been reading, like posts on Twitter and articles and things of that nature, is that people feel shame. Like that right now, it's the elderly who are eligible. It might be like frontline medical, in some states, K through 12 are getting vaccinated, right? And it differs by state. So it could be hard on Twitter where you're like, wait, you got the vaccine? How? And it's like, well, there's different rollouts by state. For example, I'm a college professor, but we're not part of the K through 12, so we're in a different tier of the rollout, whereas college professors in other states might have already been vaccinated because they're considered to be part of the teaching crew. So it differs by state. So there's some of that. But additionally, I think that people who are young might feel shame about getting the vaccine because people might judge or shame them for getting the vaccine. So I was reading a thread this morning about not asking people why they got the vaccine. Why did you get the vaccine now? You look young and healthy. And that post certainly is a reminder that just because someone is young and looks healthy does not mean that they don't have some sort of illness that compromises them and that they are eligible because of medical conditions, right? It's one of those things where I always think of my best friend, Kate. One of the things she says is like, don't worry about it. Worry about yourself, right? That if someone's getting vaccinated, we should be excited for them. And that maybe you should assume that they do have some sort of illness. And it's sort of a, social norm, politeness, faux pas to ask people questions. But then again, we ask when people are due and they're like, I'm not pregnant. It's like, why? Or when are you going to have children when they could be having infertility issues? Like sometimes we ask questions that are none of our business and can make people feel really badly. And I think now where people see that light at the end of the tunnel and they want to be part of that light at the end of the tunnel, they want to be vaccinated. And so then they start to wonder, how did you get a vaccine? And so some people have communicated that they experience shame. And an Atlantic article talked about that people are keeping it a secret, right? So that they're not even letting people know that they have gotten the vaccine, that this is a very intensely private question. And according to my poll, only 10.4% said that they would not post because it's private. So this article came out this past Wednesday. It's by Catherine Wu, and it's called People Are Keeping Their Vaccine Secret, again from the Atlantic. And so they talk about opening line. In the past 3 months, Americans have been collectively obsessed with shots of shots. Photos featuring the humble deltoid, the meaty muscle that swaddles the upper arm, newly famous at the injection site for all 3 currently cleared COVID-19 vaccines, have been flooding Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and even Tinder. Okay, well, that's another can of worms that we'll open at another time. The quote continues, after a year of misery and chaos, they're digital proof of the relief and elation that comes with boosted immunity. They're a rallying cry for others, including those who might be wary to join in. individual vaccinations, normally an intimate affair, become a public spectacle. But even though that might be something that people are excited about, there are people who do not want to share. And so they did talk to a number of people in this article that remained anonymous because it is their health information. And they get at like the reasons why they want to keep it private. And so, quote, some worried that they would be accused of line hopping. Others were wary of exposing the criteria that had qualified them. And so I'll just pause here and say that that people think people are cheating the system because they're not 79, but they could work in the health profession. They could be a frontline worker in some other way. They could get it through their place of business who has has bought vaccines. There's lots, they could have underlying conditions. And so we just don't know why people might be getting the vaccine. But in this article, this is really interesting too, is that maybe being in various levels of lockdown for the last year have people considering that there are, advantages and disadvantages from being home. And so it says a weatherman in Florida wanted to avoid being prematurely called back to the office because he'd miss out on quality time with the family. But they were united by what we might call shot self-consciousness, the worry about how their shots will be perceived by others, right? Everyone I spoke with said they were grateful to get their shots when they did. They were glad to have the protection and happy to quash a pandemic that just hit its 1-year anniversary. And so one of the things is, I think that article is really interesting because it gets at the idea that, first off, people don't want to be judged for why they have the vaccine. And so that might be a reminder when we talk to friends or other loved ones that this might be considered to be a private question of how did someone get vaccinated already? One student at my university posted that they were able to get the shot because there were extras that they were going to have to throw out. And so it's do we turn down the chance to get a vaccine if it's produced to us, if we're in the right place at the right time, right? And so then it becomes a question of, can we judge other people? We have no idea what's going on in their life. And so that's some of it. So now we're dealing with that vaccine shame, asking people questions, and instead of just being happy that people are vaccinated, right? Let's support other people, right? Let's be happy that, as that article said, quashing the pandemic, let's kick that pandemic's ass by getting vaccinated. But then what might come from it is this idea of people posting their photos. If they don't experience shame, they're just so excited, no matter their age or reason or eligibility or whatever, that they post it, that the others who have no idea how to get a shot, when they'll get a shot, might feel like they're left behind. There are some areas where there are people who don't want to get a shot, so there might be extra doses, right? There's other places where they have sign up and the signups fill up within minutes, right? And so we have to think about that the rollout maybe started, well, it definitely started problematically or imperfectly, and it's still an imperfect system, but it seems to now be moving along a lot faster. And now with the president's goal and with more doses, we might see more of it moving along. But it might become also an issue of vaccine envy. Maybe it's not so much that folks on the other side of social media are not judging people. They're just like, why not me? I want the vaccine, right? I've been home for a year. I've been stayed socially distanced from my loved ones. I've missed out on things like everyone else. So when do I get the shot, right? And so that, to me, as someone who has studied jealousy and envy, jealousy being I'm best friends with this person and, they're spending more time with a new romantic partner or a new friend. And then I feel like our relationship doesn't have the same value. That being different from envy and that sort of wishing you had what someone else had, like a vaccine shot, right? And so that could also produce feelings of jealousy, because what happens when your loved ones and friends are vaccinated and they're past the 2-week period and the CDC has reported that you can have small gatherings, continue to exercise caution. But what happens when your friends are vaccinated and you're not, and they start gathering, people start to feel left out. And I know that seems like something so small or trivial, but think about it. For an entire year, we have been triaging our needs, as I mentioned before, and that there are people who are getting back to at least being able to do a little bit because they're vaccinated, and then waiting around for yourself to get vaccinated. It becomes this level of like vaccine impatience, right? And so every time you see someone post a photo, there's a pang of envy. Like, it's like, I'm happy for you because you have a shot, but I'm also like, when do I get mine? Why can't I have a shot yet? And I'm just saying that, like, that's what people might think when they see the posts of the vaccines, which is again why I did my very unscientific poll, because it just made me think of how people might feel left out. And so how are you going to approach that in your friendships where there are people who are vaccinated and some who are not? And as people, work to get back to some whatever our new normal is going to look like, that we might be moving too fast to get back to normal, that we still have to continue to protect ourselves even if vaccinated, because someone who's vaccinated can still spread the virus. And so they probably don't want to be around people who are not vaccinated because they don't want to feel the guilt of spreading something, even though they are protected at this point. Yes, it's not 100%, but it's still better than nothing, right? So there are some things that we might have to manage in the upcoming months, especially if we're trying to get to too normal too fast, that we could spread the virus as people continue to get vaccinated. There can be a little vaccine envy and vaccine shame that we might need to consider. But in terms of our friendships, specifically, some of the things that could happen that you might want to consider is that people have different timelines based on their medical history, their jobs, their caregiving, a number of things that even with someone who's a good friend, you might not know about, right? And so we have to consider that people's timelines are not going to line up. And so how do you approach friendship when people have different timelines? What happens when you're vaccinated and your best friend is not, or vice versa? Then we're going to have different reactions to the timelines, to getting vaccinated, to feeling shame, envy, hesitancy, impatience, not wanting to get vaccinated in the first place. So there's these different things. Like when I talked about the COVID divide, we've always felt like we might be on the same page with our friends, and that maybe COVID introduced ways in which we're not. And this new phase, as people get vaccinated, might introduce some of those differences as well, right? How do people manage the different feelings or reactions to the vaccination might be something that you will be navigating over the spring and summer as people continue to get vaccinated. And so then there might be conflicts about, well, you're vaccinated, so we can get together and do X, Y, and Z, and we can go do this thing, and we can do blah, 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 and like making up for lost time, right? Like, how many people are just like excited to get vaccinated and then like, let's ease into it, right? Like, let's see how things go this summer, right? Because I have a feeling like everyone's going to rush back to full on 100% occupancy everywhere to travel and trying to make up for lost time. How many posts do you see like, once I get vaccinated, it's the 2 weeks, anyone else can come and we can get blackout drunk and we can do this and we can do that and that and that. And then it might be someone who's vaccinated might be like, well, that's not what I want to do. I still want to be cautious because of the people I'm around who aren't vaccinated. I work with people who are still not vaccinated. I'm cautious because I spent a year essentially as a hermit, and I don't know if I feel ready to have a conversation with another human being, right? So I've barely gone anywhere in the last year, and just driving an hour away with Finn to do a socially distanced dog walk with my dad for his birthday was stressful, right? Like, I was like, whoa, I haven't done this in a year, and this feels like not not cool, right? And so some people might be like, you're wasting the vaccine because you're not doing anything, or you should just go back to the way you are. You're living in fear. And so you might have people who are like, no, I continue to be cautious, or I don't feel ready, or there are things that I need to do before I dive back into things that would be quote unquote typical or normal to pre-pandemic. So those are just a few of the things that I can think of that could end up being problematic for friends as you navigate this phase of vaccination. And so it's just something to consider, that you're probably just like so excited, like, I just want to hug your face for 3 years. And they'll be like, you know what? Like, yay, I can't wait to see you, but maybe I'm not ready yet for that hug. Or, like, let's do it, but let's still maintain a face mask. Or, let's be sure that although we're vaccinated, that we include our friends who are not. And so we continue to do a Zoom party or some other traditions that you've developed over the last year, and thinking about how you can maintain and navigate your friendships through potentially a new phase that none of us might be familiar with. All perhaps, wanting to see an end to the pandemic. Some of us hoping to get vaccinated. Some of us who are vaccinated. Some of us who don't want to get vaccinated. Some of us who are impatient about being vaccinated. And it just might produce a number of conflicts over the next couple months. Is it wrong to produce conflict? No, this is the life that we're living right now. And this is something that we haven't really experienced, that at least in our lifetime, we might not have had such challenges to our friendships, and that we just haven't had to consider some of these things. And that by considering these things, it makes us maybe a better friend, or we can be a better friend to someone else, or we can just manage some difficulties because we don't want to end a friendship over a fight about, well, you're not vaccinated, so I'm not going to pay attention to you until you do get vaccinated, right? Or that I don't plan to get vaccinated and you're just wasting the vaccination by staying home. You just live your life. So there can be these conversations that if we just figured out a way to find that point in the middle, or just thinking about how everyone might feel and going, this is someone I've been friends with for a long time and I want to be friends with them post-pandemic. So what can we do to make that happen? And so for me, that's what I hope this episode has helped you do, is just consider some of the new things that you might come across, right? That things that might happen that you weren't planning on happening. And isn't that the exciting part of life, that it always keeps you on your toes, right? Sometimes you're like, can things just be like without drama for 10 minutes or for 10 hours or 10 days or 10 weeks or 10 months? Oh my goodness. That's what we're all hoping for, right? So friends, tell me what you're experiencing, right? What is going on with you and your friendships? Have you had any conversations about the vaccine with friends? Have you convinced anyone to get the vaccine? Have you experienced some of that vaccine envy, or maybe some of that vaccine shame? And were there any conversations or things that you said that you thought were helpful that might help other people in their friendships? If so, be sure to find me, which you can do at alysalucas.com, which is the house that holds all of my podcasts online, as well as you can find me at Dr. Alysa Lucas on Twitter, Best Forevers Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can also email me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. I definitely want to hear what you all are experiencing, and certainly sharing your experiences help other people. So until next time, friends, think about this new phase that we're entering, because without our friends, who would we be? Thanks for listening to Best Forevers. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and of course, share with a friend. Please be sure to follow Best Forevers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Best Forevers Pod, and I'm at Dr. Alysa Lucas on Twitter. You can always find the podcast webpage for more information at bestforeverspod.com, and share your stories of friendship by emailing me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the movement to love on our friends more, check out the podcast on patreon.com/bestforeverspod. Now, friends, check out this recommended podcast that you must get in your ear holes immediately.
Hey there, it's Allison Carter. I'm the host of the podcast, Not Your Little Lady. Each episode features a woman living in the South outside of socially accepted norms. Listen and relate as these women share stories about obstacles they faced and how it feels to come out on the other side. We talk about things that pissed us off, the booze we like to drink, and historical women who have made a difference. Through all this, we explore the importance of women owning their past, present, and future while keeping it light and funny. You can find episodes, which are released every other Wednesday, on most podcast listening apps or at notyourlittlelady.com. Be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at ladiesofnyll and on Facebook and Instagram at notyourlittlelady. Happy listening, y'all!